Hi, welcome. I am here today to work on this Solar Flare. If you've been following along on our So Long Facebook page, we have completed block 1 and we're moving on to block 2. And I'm here to show you a method that I use that the paper will not remain in your block. I actually don't stitch onto the paper. I stitch next to the fold. And I traced all the blocks. The first thing that we did was we took the patterns and we traced them onto freezer paper. There's a little bit of a wax coating on the freezer paper that we use to melt we use an iron to melt the wax to hold the fabric while we're adding the pieces to the block. So we're going to start out. This is block 2. I have my key here that tells me what fabric to use. And I've pulled all my fabrics that I'm going to use on this block. So we're going to start out with fabric W. And I'm going to take a piece and I'm going to put it face up on the back side of your pattern, on the wax side, covering all the lines that are here, showing through from the back side. Make sure that you have all the lines covered. And then I'm going to take my iron and gently holding it in place, I'm going to melt it. I have this handy little clover iron on high. I am going to add a couple pins to it to stabilize it so that it doesn't shift, because this fabric is relatively slippery, so it does shift. So using this method, if you've studied other methods of foundation paper piecing, you know that you have to adjust your stitch length to very small so that it perforates your paper, so it's easier to tear. All right, so I almost have this stuck down to this paper. The other advantage of doing it this way with this freezer paper is, because I'm not leaving the paper in, I can reuse my template. You can use it 3 or 4 times before you have to switch to a new template. I'm pinning this because I'm not quite sure that it's stuck down, and I don't want it to move while I'm stitching it, or while I'm trimming it, folding it and trimming it. Okay, so I'm going to put some pins in here. Now, I'm going to turn it over. That's nice and smooth. Turn it over. I'm going to take this piece of template, picked up my mat. Take this piece of template and fold it back along that line. And fold it so that the line actually is on the side of your template, because you need to be exact. So make sure you line your template right up against that line. Crease it, take that out. Here's your add a quarter ruler. Make sure that you have it with the thick side on your fabric, and trim off your excess fabric. Okay, then you're going to take your next piece that goes next to W, which in this case, I wrote on here, I know it's fabric R. This is fabric R. Take it, put it right sides together. So now I folded my paper template out of the way, and I've placed fabric D right sides together with fabric W. Now I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to stitch right along the side, and that'll be my 1/4 inch seam. Okay, my needle down, presser foot down, stitch my 1/4 inch seam. finger press that open. Iron it with your iron. And iron it down to your template paper. Now I have this small iron that I'm using. You can't really use a large full-size iron for this because it would, the hot surface would move over onto your wax, and you'd get wax on the bottom of your iron. But any small craft iron would work. This one, I'm having a little bit of a challenge this morning getting it to melt the wax. Which is why I'm stabilizing it with some pins. Okay, I'm gonna put some pins in that. And we're gonna move on to the next piece. Be careful not to extend your pins too far over, so that when you trim and stitch the next piece on, you don't want to hit your pins. Okay, flip it over. Find your piece that you want to line up. Hold your paper, use your template. Hold your paper back, crease it well, take your ruler, okay. Now you're going to take your next one. After D, our next fabric is O. So this is my fabric O. Take that piece, put it right sides together with that one. Check and make sure that you're covering all of your lines. So this goes to here. I can see through this paper. So I'm covering all my lines. Take it to your machine. Open your paper back up, flip it over, finger press your seam open, and then take your iron and press that flat. Okay, that's pressed down. Gonna again add some pins. Normally I would probably not have to add so many pins, but I'm not getting it to stick well today and I don't want it to shift. Okay, Flip it over. Use your template. Fold it back along that line. Use your add a quarter ruler. Trim that off. Take your next fabric, which is fabric M. Flip it over, right sides together. And this one's shorter because as you're getting to the wider part of the fan, your pieces that are required are shorter. Make sure that you shift that piece to cover your lines. I can see my lines. Okay, I'm good. Right sides together, raw edges even, covering all my lines. And stop and make sure your raw edges are even. But you know, since you trimmed your previous piece at 1/4 of an inch, if they're not exactly lined up, the raw edges, it's not going to be a problem because these template pieces, the instructions actually have you cutting a generous amount, so you have some room. Okay. Push your seam open, melt the wax on your template. Couple pins up here on the wide end. Over. Take the plastic template, fold it on that line. And the next fabric we want is fabric V. On my key, it tells me it's the hexie. Here's my hexie fabric. Take this out. Trim with your ruler. Your add a quarter ruler and your rotary cutter. Put your next piece face down. Right sides together. Check and make sure that you're covering the ends of the lines on your template. hope you learned a new technique today. Send us any questions you have, but this is a different way to foundation paper piece, and I don't have to rip any papers. My papers are just gonna come right off the bat. And I'm ready to put the purple on the bottom right here, and then the little piece of white that's the center of the block. So thank you very much. Hope you had a good time. Send us any questions you have. Bye.